Hello, welcome to Weekend Extra. This is Bethany Abrams and Pastor Jeff, and we're here to talk about this week's message in the next little thing. And this week we were talking about walking in circles. I think we can all relate to that right now. We all kind of feel like we've been doing the same thing over and over. I know some days I feel like it's Groundhog's Day again. And so I was so interested this week. You were talking about the fruits of the Spirit that we're supposed to be living out, and you chose long suffering, kind of to address where we're at, and that is a fruit of the Spirit. Now, I personally had never really thought about that fruit of the Spirit so much, probably because I don't like anything with the word suffering in it. But I loved how you talked about it being patient endurance and perseverance in a situation, and it's marked by self-control and being teachable. And so I kind of, man, how do we get there when you feel so tired and frustrated with all the circle walking? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's a great question because I think back to the very first week of this pandemic when we had to close down our in-person meetings at the church. And I talked about James chapter 1 that week, that we need to count trials as joy because the testing of our faith develops perseverance, and perseverance has to finish its work.
Yeah.
So long suffering is like tied to perseverance, right? It's all in the same kind of camp. And what's fascinating is that perseverance is something that you pick up over time.
Right.
So you don't run a marathon the first time you go out jogging.
That's for
right?
Sure.
You have to build up to it. And what long suffering does, or perseverance, that's that idea in James that it has to finish its work. For me to be a mature runner, I have to let the pain and the endurance and the pressure do its work in me for me to get to that place. So long suffering, the reason I chose that is this series we're in called The Next Little Thing. It's the next little step. It's just the decision to say, I'm not going to quit, and I don't want to quit. And I'm going to let God take me down a path that I probably wouldn't have chosen myself, but I'm going to embrace the path that I'm going down. So how do we get there? The answer would be kind of over time we get there. And it's literally what long suffering is, literally the work of God molding us played out over time is how it works.
Yeah, I think that I've prayed a lot about, like, show me something in this so it's not just all in vain, and show me, grow me, show me, what I need to be doing. And there were some times during the sermon that you were saying, like, we just don't know. We just don't always have all the answers. We're not sure why Joshua was told to go around the walls of Jericho all those times. Like, we don't have a definitive answer, but it's what God is doing, that we have to trust him in the process. And and then as you were talking about that, I loved how you pointed out that when it comes down to it, the big thing was really the little thing, and the little thing, which was at the end where he was like, go in and take Rahab and her family out. That was actually the big thing, because that ended up being, she ended up being in the genealogy of Jesus, but Joshua didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And I just was fascinated by that, because I think about all the little things that we do around here with homeschooling, and today's our last day of school, thank goodness. But
congratulations. You have long suffered.
We have. But just like thinking about these times with the kids, even during this time where we've had to make sacrifices and do things that felt small and large all at the same time, but they've really made a huge impact. And I think that they will make a huge impact on their lives coming up in the way that they spend with their children and so on. But I wanted to ask you too, you gave us 3 things that we should be doing while we're walking in circles. Did you want to cover that again?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
List them off for me so I remember what I
It's
said.
okay. Yeah, you said that we needed to worship, we needed to follow, and we need to be prepared.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and those 3 things come right out of what God said to Joshua before he sent him down to walk around the walls. So like he sent the band, right? So that was the priest with the instruments. So they were worshiping God. The priest led the way, and so the presence of God led the way. And then he sent the army, and he said, as soon as the walls fall down, you rush in and you conquer. So they were prepared to do that. And I think when we feel like we're walking in circles, we're not. That's our perception. That's not necessarily God's perception, right?
Yeah.
And so the question often becomes, how do you redeem that time? And I would say, well, stay close to God and worship him and sense where the Holy Spirit is moving you and what he wants to do. And then be ready when the circumstances are changing. We're not going to be quarantined forever. We're not going to be in a difficult situation forever. We're not going to be in bad relationships forever. Like God alters those things. And I don't really want to start from scratch when he alters that thing. I want to have taken some ground and have moved forward during the time of circling.
So for the people, there's a lot of people out there right now that feel pretty negative about the situation. How do they worship in the midst of what feels like enormous trials and the things that they can't see that God's doing? How do you worship in that?
You have to, and it's not easy. So what I'm going to say is that, but you have to trust and have faith, right? So faith is believing in what I cannot and will never fully understand. It's believing in what I don't see. And when I don't see an outcome or even like the logic of the plan, I have to trust the heart of God that there still is an outcome and there is still logic to that plan.
Right.
And I'm allowing God to do that and accomplish that in me. And so that's what worship does. Worship is acknowledging God, and it's also yielding to him. That's why in worship, when we're worshiping through singing, for instance, because worship doesn't mean music, right? So, but when we use music to worship, that's why we often sing of the greatness or the power of God. It reminds us that we're little, right? And so when I place myself in that place of humility and I have faith that God is active, even though I can't really do the math on it, that is worship. And that winds up being a decision that we have to make every day. It's not an easy thing to do. And the longer it goes, the harder it can be. One of the things I like to do is I like to read stories of people who suffered more than I did. Right. And so I love Fox's Book of Martyrs, and years ago, DC Talk put out a book called Jesus Freaks. Yeah. And there's lots of things like that where you will see people worshiping and praising and having faith in God while they're going through horrific circumstances. Right. Stuff like that. Their long suffering challenges me. Right. See, and it inspires me to do it more.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for this time, and thank you for these series. Like I said before, few weeks ago, I love these Old Testament teachings. I haven't heard any in a while, and they've been so cool, and such a new perspective on some of the stories, and I'm learning a lot, and I hope everyone else is too. But I just wanted to say thanks for that, and I cannot wait till we get back together. What do you have for us this weekend? I can't wait. I'm looking forward to this weekend.
So this weekend, we're leaving the Old Testament for a week.
Oh, that's
and
okay.
we're going to John 15, and we're talking about, I think we're in the phase of this pandemic where the mindset is open up. We're starting to open things up. And
Mhm.
so the question is, God took a bunch of stuff out of our life. What are we going to choose to put back into our life?
Right.
And I'll say this weekend, like, we are at this once in a lifetime position that we can actually reboot. That doesn't happen a lot,
Right.
but we're able to do that, and making those choices
Mhm.
that allow us to be even more effective for the Lord. So that's what we're going to look at this weekend. It should be good. And then it's June 13th, 14th, the weekend of June 13th, 14th. We're going to have in-person services again.
Yay.
We'll stay online fully too for folks who aren't ready to do that. But for
Okay.
people like you who cheer out loud, that's the
I
weekend we're
am.
going to start doing that again.
I will be there with bells on probably at every service.
Oh, there you go.
Well, thank you so much. I'm Bethany Abrams. This is Pastor Jeff with the Weekend Extra.